Caitlin Clark just walked into Milan Fashion Week and sat front row for Prada. Not as a guest, as a power player. Forbes already ranked her the fourth most powerful woman in sports, #1 if you exclude team owners. Sportico just named her the highest paid player in the WNBA. And now Prada is putting her next to Olympic gold medalists like Eileen Gu. Meanwhile, Angel Reese is watching from her phone as her Reebok shoes sit unsold on the bargain bin. That image alone tells you everything about where these two players actually stand right now. So let's talk about what really happened in Milan, why it matters way beyond basketball, and why Reese reportedly cannot stop fuming about it. Do you support Clark or Reese? Let me know down in the comments below. Picture this. Caitlin Clark, a basketball player from Iowa, now suiting up for the Indiana Fever, sitting front row at the Prada Fall/Winter 2026 show in Milan. And the crazy thing is, it doesn't look weird at all. It looks completely natural, like she belongs there. Because at this point, she does. So here's what you need to understand about Prada's front row. This isn't a situation where you just buy a ticket or get lucky with an invite. Prada is one of the most image-conscious fashion houses in the world. Every single seat in that front row is a deliberate choice. They're not filling chairs, they're sending a message about who matters right now. Carey Mulligan was there, Letitia Wright, Charli D'Amelio, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife. That's the room Clark walked into. So when a WNBA player gets placed in that front row, that's a real statement. Not a supermodel, not a Hollywood actress. A basketball player. And not just any seat either, front row, center of attention, photographed by every camera in the building. The question worth asking is, what exactly did Prada see that made them put Clark in that chair? The answer isn't that complicated when you look at the full picture. Clark has 8 figures in endorsements. Nike, Gatorade, Wilson, State Farm. She's the face of the entire WNBA right now, and every major brand in the country knows it. Prada knows it too. Her presence at that show generates the kind of media coverage most fashion houses would spend millions trying to manufacture. They got it for free just by putting her in the right seat. And here's the thing. This relationship with Prada actually goes back a couple of years. Clark wore Prada to her 2024 WNBA draft. She mentioned at the time that it was the first time the brand had ever dressed a player, male or female, for the draft. So this Milan moment wasn't a random partnership. It was a relationship that's been building, and Prada just took it to the next level. On the day of the show, Clark showed up outside the Fondazione Prada in a striped beige cropped polo blouse, cream pants, a dark brown wool trench coat, chocolate brown Prada kitten heels, gold hoops, and a black leather bag. Marie Claire called it sporty chic. And honestly, that's exactly right. It's classic Clark, athletic but clean, confident without trying too hard. Now the person sitting right next to her, that wasn't random either. Eileen Gu, 6-time Olympic medalist, Stanford student, and ambassador for Louis Vuitton, Prada, and Gucci, was placed right there beside Clark. Prada put 2 of the most marketable women in sports into the same frame on purpose, and the internet noticed immediately. One comment that went viral said, "Caitlin taking over Fashion Week now too?" From breaking WNBA records to front row at Prada. The global reach is insane. That pretty much summed up what everyone was feeling. The photos went everywhere. Fashion outlets, sports media, pop culture pages. Clark wasn't just attending a fashion show, she was the story coming out of it. That's a different thing entirely. Most athletes show up to these events and get a small mention somewhere. Clark walked in and became the headline. Here's where it gets interesting though. This is what actually separates Clark from almost every other athlete in women's sports right now. She's not out here chasing fashion opportunities. Fashion is coming to her, and the company she's keeping in that front row tells you exactly what level she's operating at. While all of this was happening in Milan, Angel Reese was back home watching it play out on her phone, with her Reebok shoes sitting unsold on a bargain bin shelf. But before we get into that, let's talk about who Eileen Gu actually is. Here's where it gets interesting. Because Eileen Gu isn't just some athlete who picked up modeling as a side hobby. She might genuinely be the most accomplished female winter sports athlete alive right now. And that's not a stretch. At the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, Gu won gold in big air, gold in halfpipe, and silver in slopestyle. 3 medals at a single Olympics in freestyle skiing. That's not a good performance. That's one of the greatest individual Olympic runs any winter athlete has ever put together. Then at the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympics, she did it again. Another 3 medals. 6 Olympic medals total in freestyle skiing, as a young woman who also has a full academic and modeling career running at the same time. So let's talk about the Stanford thing, because that matters here. Gu got into Stanford University and she's actively attending while keeping up with competitions, runway appearances, and brand deals. Louis Vuitton, Prada, Gucci, Victoria's Secret, Tiffany & Company. She's not dabbling in fashion on the side. She is a legitimate face of the global fashion industry. Brands at that level don't sign athletes as a favor. They sign people who actually move their brand forward, and that's exactly why Prada put her next to Clark. Because together, those 2 women in the same front row seat sends a very clear signal to every brand, every editor, and every camera in that building. This isn't a novelty moment. This is 2 elite women who both belong there. Now think about what that looks like to Angel Reese. Reese has spent a lot of energy trying to position herself as the WNBA's crossover star. The player who goes beyond basketball, who has style, who has culture. And here's Clark sitting next to an Olympic gold medalist who also walks runways and studies at one of the best universities in the world. That's a very specific kind of sting. Because Reese can't manufacture that. You can't just decide you belong in that room. You have to get invited. Gu's presence at that show wasn't just about glamour either. It was about credibility. It told every brand watching that Clark belongs in the same conversation as the best athletes across every sport on earth, not just basketball. That's a different category entirely. And the 2 of them together created a visual that fashion editors and sports analysts both wanted to write about, which almost never happens at the same time. That dual audience appeal is rare, and it's incredibly valuable from a brand standpoint. There is some controversy around Gu that's worth knowing about, and we'll get into it more later. She was born in the United States, grew up here, and trained largely inside the American sports system. But she competed for China at the Olympics. That drew serious criticism from a lot of people who felt she used American resources, American coaches, American infrastructure, and then went and represented a rival nation on the biggest stage in sports. It's a real debate, and it didn't go away quietly. We'll come back to it. But in Milan, none of that noise overshadowed what was happening in that front row. What people saw was 2 women at the very top of their worlds, sitting together at one of the most prestigious fashion shows on the planet. Fashion Week. Prada, front row. Olympic gold medalist on one side, highest paid WNBA player on the other. Gu's resume, 6 Olympic medals, Stanford, Louis Vuitton, Prada, is exactly the kind of company that pushes Clark's brand into a different tier. It's not just a sports story anymore. Clark is being accepted into a global elite that almost no athlete ever actually reaches. The Milan moment didn't happen by accident, though. It's the result of an endorsement portfolio that has been quietly rewriting the record books for female athletes. Let's talk about what's actually in Clark's endorsement portfolio, because when you line it all up, it stops looking like a WNBA story pretty fast. Sportico just named her the highest paid player in the entire league. Not highest paid rookie, not highest paid guard. Highest paid player, period. And most of that money isn't even coming from her league salary. It's coming from the brands lining up to put her name on their products. Start with Nike. Clark's deal with them is reportedly worth $28 million over 8 years. That's the largest endorsement contract any WNBA player has ever signed. And Nike isn't just putting her face on an existing shoe and calling it a day. They're building a full signature program around her, which includes her own shoe. That's a completely different level of investment. Nike doesn't do signature shoes for players they're testing out. They do it for players they're betting on long-term. Then there's Wilson Sporting Goods. Clark has a signature line with Wilson, And here's where it gets interesting. She's the first female athlete Wilson has built a signature line around since Michael Jordan. Let that sit for a second. Michael Jordan. The last time Wilson did this for someone, it was Jordan, and now it's Clark. That's not a marketing talking point, that's a real historical parallel that tells you exactly how Wilson sees her value. Gatorade recently signed her too, and it's being reported as a record deal for a female athlete in their entire portfolio. Gatorade has been signing athletes for decades. They've had some of the biggest names in sports history on their roster. And Clark's deal is setting a new record inside that company. So that's Nike, Wilson, and Gatorade all treating her as a flagship-level investment at the same time. And then there's State Farm. Clark was their first ever female athlete endorser. Not their first WNBA player, their first female athlete. State Farm has been around since 1922. Over 100 years of operation, and Clark is the first woman they've ever brought on as an athlete endorser. That's a significant thing for a company that size to do, and they didn't do it quietly. They built real campaigns around her. So you've got 4 major brands, Nike, Wilson, Gatorade, State Farm, all treating Clark as a centerpiece, not an addition. These companies have data. They track sales, they track engagement, they track who's actually moving product versus who's just getting attention. And right now, every data point they have is pointing at the same person. Forbes put her 4th on their list of the most powerful women in sports globally. But they also noted that if you take team owners off that list, she's number 1, as an active player. Playing in a league that was genuinely struggling to get mainstream attention just a few years ago. That's a wild shift in a very short amount of time. And the league itself is reflecting that shift. The WNBA just locked in an 11-year, $2.2 billion media rights deal. That's 4 times the value of the previous contract. 4 times. Analysts covering the league are directly connecting that jump to what Clark did for TV ratings and attendance when she entered the league. ESPN has reported the league is now generating enough revenue to trigger revenue sharing among players. That didn't exist before. None of this happened because Clark got lucky with a few sponsors. This is a multi-brand strategy built around one person who consistently delivers. On the court, in interviews, in how she handles herself publicly. Every brand that signed her is seeing a return, and the ones that haven't signed her yet are paying close attention. Back home, though, while Clark was sitting front row in Milan, one athlete was getting a very different kind of brand news, and it involved a clearance tag. Here's a question worth sitting with. Angel Reese signed with Reebok, got a signature shoe, got real marketing support, got a genuine launch moment. Months go by, and the shoe still hasn't sold out. What does that tell you? Reebok came into this deal with real intentions. They've been trying to rebuild their basketball brand for a while now, and signing a high-profile WNBA player with Reese's social media following looked like a smart move on paper. Big launch. Real backing. A player who generates constant attention online. It checked a lot of boxes, but the shoe isn't moving. Reports are coming in that Reese's Reebok shoes are now showing up in bargain bins, not after a sellout run where they restocked at a lower price. Just sitting there, marked down, waiting for buyers who aren't showing up in the numbers anyone at Reebok was hoping for. That's a bad sign at any stage of a shoe cycle. This early, it's a really bad sign. Now compare that to what analysts are projecting for Clark's Nike signature shoe. The expectation, based purely on the demand for anything with her name attached to it, is that it sells out in minutes, not days, minutes. That gap isn't just a marketing story. That's consumer behavior telling you exactly who people actually want to spend money on. So Reebok is reportedly pulling back. Not making a loud announcement about it, just quietly reducing how much marketing support they're putting behind Reese going forward. And here's the thing about when brands go quiet on you. It's never a good sign. When a company stops pushing your product, it's because their own data told them something they didn't want to hear out loud. And here's what that data is probably telling them. Reese's brand runs almost entirely on controversy and social media noise. She gets talked about constantly, right? That's real, but getting talked about and actually moving product are 2 completely different things. Sponsors have been around long enough to know that difference. Attention doesn't pay for inventory, sales do. Clark's brand works the opposite way. It's built on performance, consistency, and how she carries herself around her teammates. She publicly hypes up Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, and Sophie Cunningham. When she got hurt, she was transparent about it and handled it without drama. Brands love that because it's predictable. Low risk, high return. You know what you're getting with Clark, and what you're getting is someone who makes the brand look good every single time. The history between Reese and Clark goes way back. After LSU beat Iowa in the 2023 NCAA tournament, Reese did the John Cena "you can't see me" gesture right in Clark's face during the final moments. That moment went viral, and Reese leaned into it hard. Since then, there's been a steady pattern of social media commentary, veiled digs, and Reese finding ways to insert herself into Clark's story. When Clark announced her LPGA partnership, Reese tweeted, "I can play golf too." That's it. That was the whole tweet. Fans immediately clocked it as exactly what it looked like: frustration dressed up as a joke. And that pattern keeps following her. Every time Clark hits a new level, there's a reaction. It's become its own storyline at this point, and not one that's doing Reese any favors with the brands watching from the sidelines. Sponsors are not naive about any of this. They watch how athletes behave publicly, how fans respond, and most importantly, what the actual sales numbers look like. Right now, every one of those signals is moving in the same direction, away from Reese and straight toward Clark. And Nike is making absolutely sure everyone notices which way they're leaning. So let's talk about what Nike is actually doing here, because this goes way beyond just putting her name on a shoe and calling it a day. Nike does not hand out signature shoe programs casually. The list of athletes who've ever had a true signature line is short, and it's been almost entirely male. Michael Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, Kevin Durant. That's the tier we're talking about. So the fact that Nike is building one around Clark isn't just a nice gesture. It's a deliberate statement about where they think women's basketball is heading and who they think is going to lead it there. And here's where it gets interesting. They're not just keeping Clark inside basketball. Nike is reportedly expanding her program to include golf, with crossover appearances at LPGA events and a positioning as a two-sport ambassador. Think about what that actually means. They're not just signing an athlete, they're building a lifestyle brand around a single person across multiple sports and multiple audiences. That's a completely different playbook. That's the kind of strategy you use when you believe someone has genuine crossover potential beyond any one sport or any one fan base. But that's not all. Nike is doing all of this right now in the offseason, before the 2026 WNBA season has even tipped off. They're pouring resources into building hype around a player who isn't even on the court yet. That tells you something important. They're not reacting to what Clark has already done. They're actively trying to shape how big she gets next. That's a forward investment, not a reward. There are also reports circulating about a potential Netflix docuseries in development centered around Clark. The kind of access-driven content that follows her through the season, behind the scenes, real moments. That model has worked for other athletes and teams. It pulls in people who don't even watch basketball and turns them into fans. It opens up audiences that traditional sports media never reaches. And for Clark, whose personality and story are genuinely compelling, that format could be massive. The whole Indiana Fever organization is feeling this ripple effect too. Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, these players are competing in front of bigger crowds than the Fever have ever seen, getting more national media coverage, and playing in a league that now has a $2.2 billion media deal backing it up. The 2026 season is shaping up to be the most commercially significant in WNBA history, and a big reason for that is sitting front row at Prada right now. None of that is an accident. When one player's brand gets strong enough, it doesn't just benefit her, it pulls the whole organization up with her. The Fever's ticket demand, their merchandise sales, their TV numbers, all of it is connected to what Clark has built off the court. That's a rare thing. Most athletes elevate themselves. Clark is elevating an entire franchise and, honestly, an entire league. And Angel Reese is watching all of this in real time. She's watching Nike funnel resources into Clark's program while Reebok goes quiet on her own campaign. She's watching the gap between them grow wider, not just in endorsements but in cultural relevance and brand power. And there's not a lot she can do about it because brand value isn't something you can argue your way into. You either have it or you don't. And right now the market is being very clear about where it stands. Nike's bet on Clark isn't really about shoes. It's a long-term investment in making her one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet. The 2026 season hasn't started yet, and she's already the most talked about player in the league. That number on Gu's controversy is still worth unpacking though, because it adds a whole different layer to the Milan moment. So here's where everything lands. Clark pulled in an estimated $8.1 million in endorsements in her rookie season alone. Her rookie season. Forbes called it a shift in how female athletes are valued in professional sports, and honestly, that's underselling it. Nike, Wilson, Gatorade, State Farm, every major brand in her portfolio is doubling down, not pulling back. Reese is fuming. Reebok is quietly rethinking, and Clark is just sitting front row at Prada next to an Olympic gold medalist, looking completely unbothered. Do you support Clark or Reese? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.